Welcome to the With You Rugby Podcast, designed to give you an in-depth look at the United States Rugby Foundation, including our grant programs and recipients, fundraisers, events, and much more. Now let's get started. Hello, everyone. I'm Brian Vizard, President of the United States Rugby Foundation, and I want to welcome you to another edition of our With You Podcast as we get closer to our 2021 U.S. Rugby Hall of Fame induction ceremony sponsored by Penn Mutual. We'll have more of these as we get to know our Hall of Fame inductees and special award recipients just a little bit better. And today we welcome in Mark Hoder, the son of 2021 U.S. Rugby Hall of Fame Lifetime Achievement Award recipient, the late Bob Hoder. And also joining us is longtime friend Pete Thorpe. Welcome, Mark and Pete. Thank you for joining us today.
Yep, thank you for having us. Thanks, Brian. Thanks for having us. Thank you.
I noticed you're in Rugby Imports HQ right there. That's quite a room to have this interview in.
Yeah, that kind of works out. So what we were just saying, it looks good.
Actually, yeah. It's good. There's a lot of stuff on that wall.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, guys, let's go back to the beginning and Bob's, career and life. Tell us a little bit about where he grew up, the sports he played, how big a family, and some of the other things he did as a kid.
Yeah, he's got three brothers. They moved a lot. His dad was in automotive industry and ended up, I didn't even realize he went to three high schools. He went right to Arlington Heights in Illinois, then he went to Grosse Pointe his junior year, and then Barrington High School for his senior year, which is in Rhode Island right around the corner. So he moved a bit right there towards the end of his high school career there, and played football, played wrestled, and really grew from, I guess my uncle tells me anyway, he was supposedly like 5'6", 130 pounds, as a junior or sophomore playing JV football. And then suddenly he grew up, it's not huge, but 6 feet, 170 pounds by his senior year, and did real well. Was the captain of the Barrington High School football team before he even showed up, I guess, because he had done so well in Grosse Pointe. So either way, he big athlete, moved a lot, and I think really settled well with the Barrington High School team there.
And how about football? I mean, football was kind of his main sport before rugby, right? Tell us a little bit about his football career.
Yeah, so he did really well in the high school, but then you went to University of Rhode Island and not a huge guy, and just ended up walking on as a freshman, and eventually was defensive captain by the end for his senior year. So he moved up there and ultimately got into the Hall of Fame at the University of Rhode Island too.
Right.
So, and after that, and this is where the rugby kicks in. He started with he moved to New York City and started playing though for the Providence Steamroller, a semi-pro football team in the area here. And that's really through the players there and the athletes there, he got introduced to rugby through a few guys that were playing on the Old Blue also. So he ended up having a really nice career at the semi-pro level for 2 or 3 years, got to know the guys there and maintained lifelong friendships with those people, but also 1 or 2 of them were rugby guys and got them to go out for the Old Blue.
The Old Blue, one of the premier teams in the nation. How did it go with Old Blue? Tell us a little bit about his time there.
I was pretty young, but I know the people he played with more than what actually happened on the field, Brian. He knew Bill Campbell, good friends, Ed Haggerty, good friends, all names Dick Donnelly. I'm sure I missed some other, Dr. Russ Warren.
Dr. Warren, yeah, Dr. Warren, who was the surgeon for the New York Giants, and did Pedro's shoulders and everybody. So, and actually going back to the Steamrollers in typical Bob fashion, where he used to play with them. Back later, he was the president of the Steamrollers and kept all the archives right here in his office and everything. He was a big historian on that and probably still had, all of the papers for the Providence Steamrollers going back to 1929 and 28. I mean, it was just, when Bob got into something, it was 100%. That was it. There was no 99. It was 100 or nothing.
And you talked about Providence, the football team, but he also founded the Providence Rugby Club, if I'm not mistaken, and was involved there for a number of years. Tell us about some of his exploits there.
Well, I mean, he was at the beginning with Jay Fluke.
Dave Zacconi was a steamroller.
Dave Zacconi was a steamroller. Zacconi, who was the athletic director at Brown University, was a three three-lettered athlete at Brown University in the 50s when they still did those things. And, they started the club in 69. And back then in New England, I mean, it was Providence versus Boston, and Boston would have all the, they'd import the Irish guys for the skilled players and such. In Providence, we had we would just hammer. I mean, I didn't join the team till about 78, 79, but back then Providence was Providence, Boston. Those were the days when packs were packs, and when they came together, there was none of this getting together. It was like whoosh, you could hear it. I mean, it was, they're always good battles and always good teams. And Providence had guy Mullins, right? Bill Mullins, who was like a tremendous kicker. Again, just an American kid who just was a hell of a fullback and such. So, no, and I mean, at one time they were running 5 sides. You know what I mean? They were running 5 sides at the peak. But we always, all through my time, we always maintained 3+ sides. And that was up through the 80s, 88, 89. So, from that base, all that base grew. It really just continued on, the Providence Rugby Club. And I mean, we were one of the only clubs in the country to have a clubhouse with showers and everything, walking distance from the field and everything. So, just amazing.
And the clubhouse was something my dad wanted and purchased, I think in 1980, somewhere around that.
Yeah.
And it was really a beautiful building he loved. And we had the second floor was where they had the clubhouse, third floor were the showers. And really for that time frame, it was amazing that they had that. And
Sure.
Quite a few stories out of that second
I bet.
Oh, yeah. No, it was it was an old Providence fire station, really is what it was.
Did it have the pole in it still? Did it still have the pole in it?
Yeah, actually, there was something to go down there to fire down there. There was.
The restaurant didn't like that.
The restaurant.
Hey, guys, tell us about Bob as a player, though. What position did he play? What were some of his attributes as a player?
Well, Bob, the one thing about Bob, and I came in at the end of his career, Bob hit. He tackled. It was like the guys used to tell me, and I witnessed it firsthand, was, you better take for the backs. You better take your guy down because Hoder's going to take all of yours down. It was just, there's a 3-pile guy, 3 guys doing them all. Bob, boom, blew it up. I mean, Bob hit like he never ever did anything 99%. He was a smart player. He had hands of stone, could not catch. All right, let's just get that right. Bob couldn't catch, but if he had the ball in his hands and he went into a thing, it was coming out our side. It never came out the other side. You know what I mean? He was just a good, hard-nosed, good old-fashioned rugby player who he took no qualm. He gave it, and you see all those pictures of him with the mud and all that. Perfect. That was Bob without trying to be.
See, he's always such a nice guy, always mild-mannered, off the field, but I guess on the field he's a different person, huh?
Oh, total. Yeah, he was like Jack Lambert, and think of all, Nitschke and Butkus, and just like the middle linebacker type. I mean, when I came around, he was no longer playing wing forward; he was playing hooker. You know what I mean? So it was, just to get on the field. He played. And he played. I mean, he could have played 18 into his 40s, for God's sakes. But, when he got into his later 30s, again, for the growth of the club, there were younger guys, and he was like, all right, give these guys a chance, you know what I mean? And it makes more sense, again, for the growth of rugby, for the growth of the team, Bob was all about the growth of rugby. That was the one thing that always amazed me. He just going to help the game of rugby football. And if it was, that's what we were going to do. Grassroots level, that's really where he was at.
Bob was also a businessman, and he turned that passion for rugby into a business with Rugby Imports. Tell us about how he got involved with that, how it got started, and how it all went down back then.
You know the story?
I'm going to let you tell most of it, but I've heard it started with a canceled check. Or stop payment on a check.
No, what happened, there was from what I understand, there was a fine men's store in 1968. And that's where Providence had to get their rugby jerseys from. So Bob, he must have been the treasurer or something, of course, and go down and bought the jerseys. And so when the guy was going into the back to look for, to go pull out the jerseys, he pulled out the label and he saw where it was from and such like that, wrote it down, and then, bought the jerseys and everything, and then contacted Halbro over in England and formed a relationship. And that's really from the trunk of his car. He would, when he would go to games on Saturdays and such like that, the other team would be coming over to be, buying shirts and such right out of the trunk of his car. And then, he built the facility and, we started manufacturing jerseys and, just crazy.
Brian, how some of it happened was my mom's English, so he married my mom. He had this name that he got from this store called Halbro, and my mom's from this northern Yorkshire small town, Pontefract. He's in the farm there, and he's borrowing the car, and they're like, "Where are you going?" He's like, "I'm going to go find this Halbro," and they're like, "You're crazy! It's over the moors. You'll never find it. You get lost. You won't be back tonight." And sure enough, he found it. He met with Bert Moores, who's the was the owner at that time, and their family had run it forever.
Yeah. And
he said, "I need some shirts," and they gave him some shirts, and then you're like, "Well, what do you do?" And he's like, "Well, I'm a manufacturer sales rep," and they're like, "Well, we need somebody to sell stuff in the U.S. Do you want to do that?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'll try to sell something in the U.S." And they left the room, came back with like a stack of catalogs, about 20 shirts, and they sent him on his way. And from there, he came back. We're in East Providence now. We originally started where we lived. I grew up in East Providence and started in our, I think it was garage, and then went to the basement, and then my mom eventually kicked him out because there was a secretary smoking up in the
Gene.
Up in the kitchen.
That's right, Gene. Who Bob made become a member of the Providence Rugby Club. If she was going to work at Rugby Imports, you had to be a member of the Rugby Club and pay your dues.
Oh, that's funny.
And the basement just filled up, and really what they did, though, they took those catalogs that he had, and at night, because he had this other job, he'd come home and they would handwrite out, my mom and him would handwrite out the catalog and send them to all the contacts they could find, and it just grew from there. So it would, pretty amazing story, that part of it, the connection with my mom, England, and it originally started from New York, in a sense, with the old blue guys.
Right,
I think they were one of the ones who needed a set too. So
exactly.
He started with all that, and that blew up from that one connection over in Manchester, Bolton, where Halbro was. Then he lined up a sock Pro Star. I'm not sure where they were there in the Midlands somewhere. That was for the socks. And then all of a sudden he got cotton Oxford boots. I don't even know if you've heard of those, Brian.
Oh, sure, I wore those.
I think I saw Brian a pair when you go way back when. Size 11 and a half. Yeah.
Maybe. Real high top. They're pretty heavy, if I remember.
Oh yeah. They with the 3-inch studs on the bottom. Yeah, Frankenstein boots.
Yeah. And so he lined them up with the boots, and then eventually he went to Rugby England and got Gilbert and became manufacturer's rep with them, or rep for them.
Yeah, Rodney Webb, who was the owner of Gilbert at that time, who'd been the English wing. Yeah. He would actually. Rodney shows how to hand stitch the balls, for God's sakes.
Somebody there doing that. The old leather ball.
The old leather balls,
Sure. Now, the Rugby Import logo, I mean, Jerry West is like synonymous with the NBA logo. Is there any kind of history behind that Rugby Imports logo?
Oh, yeah, that's a famous, that's the Barbarians versus the All Blacks. And I believe, I forget who I
always get it wrong. It's
Gareth Edwards.
Gareth Edwards, and I believe the other one's the fullback.
It's not Gareth Edwards, believe it or not.
JPR Williams.
No, it was.
It was the fly. Who was the fly half for the Barbarians?
It was
Barry John.
So this is. I even know the.
I always thought
that it was a back for the All Blacks that only had a few caps. But what happened with Brian? I'm going to get you the names. I can't.
Yeah, we'll get you. Yeah, I'm not blank right now. I thought the Gareth though. I thought that was.
I have. So what happens is my dad. They hired a marketing guy. He went through. My dad handed him. They went through the advertising company just around the corner. Went through there and they picked out this one shot from that famous game, the '76 game. With the All Blacks against the Barbarians, and this one scene, and then my dad had to. We have handwritten letters here. That's why I'm embarrassed. My dad had to write each. He had to write them each a handwritten letter, and then they wrote back handwritten letters giving him permission to use the two people there.
Okay.
Yeah, you actually got it copyrighted and such. Yeah, I remember.
Nice. Yeah. Now, I'm sure your dad had some odd orders or some some real, orders he had to turn around in a quick amount of time. Were there any kind of, Pete, maybe from your history, but any odd orders or any that, Bob was really proud of that he was able to pull off?
Well, I think actually in our time, it was just teams, but I believe after I was gone, what was the movie from South Africa, Mark?
Yes,
Invictus?
This question, yes. So Invictus there was crazy story about that is they came to us to do all the shirts because they needed them done a certain way. And that's when we were manufacturing the cotton jerseys, which we did for 20 years.
Right.
And whatever, you're dealing really with, I don't know if the company or the whatever.
Yeah.
Is the outfitters of the costumes. But, they wanted all these shirts done. And we're used to manufacturing so many a week, but not in the thousands. So they didn't need 1,000, but they needed like 250 shirts, and they needed them 2 weeks. And so we got them. They actually wanted us overnight them on a Friday. We'll take them on a Saturday. So we got all these shirts. They had people working here overtime. We only had 2 or 3 sewers going crazy to get, the traditional shirt over to them. Overnight it to them, Saturday delivery, boom, everything's all set. They called Monday morning. They had wanted to have them washed look, so they stone washed them on Sunday and ruined all the shirts. They had to do everything and get it to them in a week. So needless to say, they paid twice. There's no way around it. It was crazy.
That's pretty funny.
That was a big one with the movie. We did a lot of other product for them. We've done some stuff with Ralph Lauren. We did a lot of some rugby balls for them, and for Guinness we've done rugby balls and jerseys. We did the original ones for Reebok, Brian. Remember the hoops, the really cool looking hoops for the Eagles, the red, white, and blue hoops that Reebok did. We made those, so that was a real nice one, and feather in our cap. That, and we've done some for even the Stars and Stripes and Dennis Conner. There.
Right. I was going to say, when talking about that, with we used to do a lot of sailing, and the mega yachts that used to race around the world and such. I remember we get this call from this Greek guy. And I find out later, he's like the 8th richest man in the world, and he goes, I need 400 red rugby shirts, scarlet, blah blah blah. I'm like, he goes, and I need them. I go, so I call the factory in England. I speak with Robert. It's like, Robert, got this gigantic order. They're willing to pay. And he's like, hey, Peter, I can't do that. I said, no, Robert, look, let's just get it. We can get it go. So anyhow, we basically shipped 400 shirts, just drop shipped them right to New York, right there, and they went off, and we got a lot of that type of stuff. When all of a sudden, like they needed it yesterday, you know what I mean? And I was able to turn it around, and come to find out, Pete, don't you know who that guy is? I don't know who anything is. It's just funny thing is, because it would come in and we'd sell product, guys could walk in. So one day I'm in here and I'm working, then the guy comes in, kind of a big kid, young kid. I could tell he's from Brown University. And he goes, I need a pair of boots, the Oxford boots that I sold you. And so I go, what size? He goes, 11 and a half. I'm like, all right, listen, I'm a little busy right now. Just sit over there. I'll be with you in about 10 to 15 minutes. Sure, no problem. All of a sudden, there's a buzz in the back of the building, everybody's going crazy, the sewers and everything. And I go back there and I go, what's the problem? They go, Pete, don't you know who that is? I go, no, I got no idea. It was JFK Jr., who played second row at Brown, who was a pretty good ball player. So anyhow, he gives me the check, I think we'll be all right on this,
That's funny. That's a good one.
It's just kind of funny how that happened.
My dad, we delivered everywhere. So I don't even know how. I just know, we've delivered behind dumpsters. We've brought them to the airports. We've smuggled them in from whatever.
Oh, please, we go on tour, and then every guy would have 5 jerseys coming back over.
Right.
Yeah, get some guy a deal so they wouldn't have to. Don't want to say that. The customs people make that. About that.
But just, the problem I had with my dad a lot was he could never say no. So
exactly.
These guys need these shirts in 3 weeks. Now we can't do the shirts in 3 weeks. Sure enough, 4 a.m. he gets up, he calls the factory, talks to Robert Morris, the owner. All right, they'll be here in 2. So he would definitely went above and beyond to get people the uniforms and the jerseys. His whole career.
Actually from day one. He was very customer oriented right from the get go. tell people you're going to deliver it, you deliver it. And that's the way it was.
Hey guys, Rugby Imports also sponsored the first USA Rugby coaching education program. How did that all start with Rugby Imports, and what did it mean to your dad to be involved in that program?
That really meant everything to him. I mean, he got to know George Hook. I'm not sure if he met him on an Irish tour or.
No, actually, George, when I was a captain in the mid '80s, Bob brought George over. He was our coach. George was our coach. How can I say, Thorpe, would you just kick the ball?
Yeah.
You know? But they just formed a love affair of rugby. I mean, they're two men who loved rugby, and that's how that started. And Bob was always grassroots. I mean. I can remember being 22 years old, the University of Rhode Island. I'm the captain, and Bob, like he said, he worked in New York, and we had our practice every Thursday. He would come, and he'd coach us, and then he would referee the scrimmages. But I remember he would always run with us, the pre-run. And I remember one time looking, I going, man, this guy's ancient. He did 38, 40 years old. He's keeping up with us. I mean, it's like, man, I hope I'm in that kind of shape when I'm that old. But a typical weekend for Bob, and Mark was probably about 6 or 7 years old, who knows, he was up at 8 o'clock, probably refereeing 2 or 3 college rugby games, and then he would either play or referee the B game for Providence, or go coach or go referee a game in New England somewhere, Boston versus Hartford or something, then come back, and like play a B or a C game here, and then, have a couple pints at the thing. That was a typical Saturday for Bob. I mean, it just from the get-go, just going all the way through. I forgot the question.
No, so Brian, once he slowed down a little bit with that, that's when he got George involved, and they really decided he always believed in the coaching, and to educate the coaches, and that they should be continuously educated, and that's what's really going to grow the sport. And that's where they set up, sort of a national technical center here. They did that for a few years, but that's where they really got these clinics together, and they started doing the certification program. And that's what he loved, because he had, whether you had 5 guys, coaches meeting to get, have together and discuss things, or whether you had 50. But I mean, they had a huge one down in Houston at one point during one of the internationals. But he just loved that, how many people he was getting to know the coaches that he got to know, and the fact that they were learning from his international buddies that he'd met either through playing or whatever. He had George Hook, then he had Eddie O'Sullivan, then he had Nigel Horton, Barry Honan from over in Australia, who's still involved with it, and that's just a few of them. Eventually, we brought over Richard Ashfield, who's now helps out at Stanford and has helped coach a lot of other people. He helped us run it a few years later after George stepped aside. So it was quite a nice way of doing things. I think it really, really helped the coaching, increase the coaching level, and the quality, and then also then just the infrastructure got set where the coaches are now full time. I mean, it wasn't exactly connected to that, but it really
there was a standardization. You know what I mean? Before it was just I played rugby. Yeah, you can be a coach. All right, you're an older. You know what I mean? So more of just getting standards in place.
Now, Bob coached himself. Tell us a little bit about his coaching background and his career as a coach in rugby.
I knew this question was coming in, and Bob was all, it was about possession of the ball, and if you had to, if you look back at coaches today, he was more like a Bill Parcells, Bill Belichick, where it was like, if we have the ball, they don't, and if you were a back. And God forbid, but you were running the ball, you did not want that ball to end up on the other team, because those forwards work so hard to get you that ball. You better make sure that you either score or you get it back, so we're able to run a play. So backs, we had to learn how to maul and such like that. And as the game of rugby, that backs don't like to maul and ruck and that kind of stuff. But if you wanted to play for the Providence Rugby Club, you learned how to maul real quick and set a base so that so we keep on going. It was very very structured practices and skills. The one thing, it was very smart. Like a lot of times people just run to run. But Bob always said, have a ball in your hand, just be passing it, you know what I mean? So you always had a ball, no matter what, and that's why, you always had a ball. Guys, like 3-4 guys, just, all right, those are your guys who are your speed. You run with those guys, and just so the ball, he just always knew that. And while, like I said, probably because he had the hands of stone, but he understood that. And while he wasn't a back, and back then we had a very good backfield, and so but we always knew to not ever give that ball up ever, because you did not want to hear it.
Yeah, and along those lines, Pete. I mean, when I got my first rugby ball, I mean, I carried that thing everywhere. I slept with it, brought it to work, brought it to school. I mean, I carried that thing around forever.
Yeah.
And I think it helped my skills, and that's kind of how the whole A Ball for All program started with the foundation. Just where, if kids had their own rugby ball, I think their skills would improve that much more. It'd expand the game a little bit. Kids would see other kids playing with a rugby ball, and who knows, maybe they'd get involved. So
Dad thought the same thing, Brian. He used to always get a ball in their hands. He loved it. He loved it. Of course, he wanted to be a Gilbert ball, but he loved the Gilbert ball. And then as far as the coaching on my end, the one thing he did I only experienced it for a year, but we had my senior year in high school. Just so happened we had an exchange student in our high school from New Zealand. So we ended up talking to my dad, and we started the Barrington High School football team spring of my senior year. And so what I remember is, one, we got a good group of athletes together, and two, he sort of put a lot of responsibility on the high school kids, which no one was used to. You know what I mean? They had to, line the fields. They had to organize the practice. If he was late, we had to figure out, what drills to do with the balls or what games to play.
Yeah.
And then he sort of instilled that on everybody, that you've got to be organized and you've got to help step up. You're going to have to drive to the games. You're going to have to figure out, if you get lost, how to get to the game, or you're not playing.
Yeah.
And the high school team lasted for at least 20 years. And tons of kids from that organization, which he put a lot of responsibility on them, went on then to college and to not only to play, but a lot of them ended up being the leaders of their clubs and continued on. So the rugby thing, I only experienced 1 year. I mean, I saw some other later on a little bit, but really that was the year I got coaching. And we ended up, believe it or not, in New England our first year. You ended up winning the championship. We show up and they're like, who are these guys? Our first year, and by the end of it, it's a pretty cool experience to win the whole thing your first year, and still have people coming up to us sort of mentioning that. So we had 1 year. I got 1 year with him, Brian. I mean, and it was a good one.
That was good.
So,
hey, Mark, did you ever play with your dad in an old boys game or anything like that? You ever suit up together?
I played with my uncle. I've not played with my dad.
Okay.
So I don't know if he regretted that and I regretted it, or I think it could have been a little better, Brian.
Yeah. Hey, looking back on your dad's rugby career, what do you think he's most proud of in all the things he accomplished in rugby?
Well, it's hard for me to say. I mean, I think he's most proud. He liked the championships that Providence won. They went up to Can-Am. They did well there. They won the NERFU tournament a few times, or the NERFU League, things like that. And I saw bits and pieces of that. But I think ultimately, and they did touring sides and they did a lot of tours. He went. I know in '87 he went over as a manager or just to be with him.
Yeah, that was my year.
2 games.
Yeah, that was my year.
Up into 2 games, but I really think he enjoyed the people, Brian, more than anything, and the internationalism of the whole sport. You know what I mean? He loved to talk to people on the phone that had the same passion that he did at rugby, and so I don't know if there's any one thing, but I think he loved the fact that how it went on, and it was a lifetime of rugby in a sense. It went from the playing that you've discussed to then the coaching, and through all the coaching, he was running around with his head cut off refereeing, and then he got more into the technical aspects with George Hook, and really developed some great relationships with coaches throughout the U.S., all at that sort of high school and collegiate level.
Yeah. I think the fraternity of the rugby community is really where he enjoyed that the most. The camaraderie, and it's which, unless you've played the game, you can't experience any other way. Where it's like you play, and you're instant friends and such. And and Bob, he just truly loved the game. I remember we had a team. I think it was Gosforth, England. And they were at our clubhouse. I remember overhearing these 2 English guys talking about Bob. The man's crazy. He loves the game. He just got into the game. He loves the game more than we ever even thought of. The man truly loves the game, and I just started laughing because I think he was trying to recruit somebody. He would found that, oh yeah, you used to play football. You're right. Come on up, play this. And then he started showing him the game, and trying to recruit the guy. Just constant recruitment and such like that. But just a true love for the game of rugby, all aspects of it.
And what do you think it would mean to Bob to be recognized as a Lifetime Achievement Award recipient of the Hall of Fame? What do you think you would feel about that?
I think he would love it. It's a perfect award for him, really, the Lifetime Achievement, because that's, as I said, that's what it was. It was a lifetime of rugby. There wasn't anyone, whatever. He wasn't an Eagle Brian. He wasn't, he didn't win a national championship at the collegiate level, or he didn't rep any super international matches, but really it was a lifetime of rugby that he loved, and I think that's what he would be proud of, that it was sort of the acknowledgement of that love that he's had for the sport in all different areas his whole life.
Yeah.
And what do you think what does it mean to your family for Bob to be recognized?
Yeah, when he passed away 3 years ago, and it's still, we see every picture. I mean, most of the memories have rugby in the background somewhere, or the people that, my mom still has people writing letters. It's just the rugby support was amazing, and still is. People still pop in here to say hello, ask how the family's doing, and I don't know. I think we look at it sort of the last, I guess, part of his rugby career, right? I mean, it's the last piece of the rugby career. It is an award like this, and we're all really grateful for it. We're super grateful for how the community, reached out for months, after he passed away. And like I said, they still come in and say hello, or give us a call, or say he was one of a kind. We said some guy the other day, he delivered a predator by himself in the middle. I was like, what? Like, he was one of a kind. They don't make him like him down in California. Just call him.
But Bob told you he was going to do something. He did it. There was no, if and buts. Oh, this happened, that happened. It just got done. It was just the way he is.
And he also loved the rugby jersey. That's the one part.
Yeah.
I forgot to even talk about Brian. He was, I think, addicted to the rugby shirt. He would always wear rugby shirts. He made them for 20 years. He loved wearing the ones he made more than anything.
Yeah.
But even the receptor, we've always had rugby shirts in our house. We still have too many, as I'm sure you have too many, Brian. Right?
Is that your everyday work attire there, Mark?
I wear a rugby shirt at least once a week. Maybe not in the summer. Then I'm going to rugby polo, Brian. Big change. It's one of the two of them. So yeah, I wear a rugby shirt a lot, and he wore it almost every day. So,
well, guys, we're really looking forward to the event on the 29th of October. That's going to do it for today's With You podcast. But again, I really enjoyed talking to both Mark Hoder, the son of the late Bob Hoder, one of our 2021 Lifetime Achievement Award recipients, and Pete Thorpe as well, a longtime friend. It's been great catching up, hearing some old stories about Bob and all he's meant to the game of rugby. So thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it.
David Duckham and Ian Hurst.
Okay, there you go. You've been thinking about this the whole time.
Thank God for the computer, but I can't believe it.
There you go. All right, thanks, Mark. For all those people who are looking it up, you don't have to do that anymore. So thank you.
We beat you, Google.
Yeah. Well, folks, that's going to do it for another issue of our With You podcast. We'll be having more of these as we get closer to our 2021 U.S. Rugby Hall of Fame induction ceremony, sponsored by Penn Mutual. And despite the Ireland game being called off, we will have our Hall of Fame function at the Luxor Hotel on Friday, October 29th. If you'd like more information about that and a way to register, go to usrugbyfoundation.org/Hall of Fame. That's going to do it for today. Until next time, stay safe, everyone.